Hi, this is Justin from Justin's Fountain of Youth, and today I have a very interesting video idea to talk to you guys about. So this is the problem with performance metrics when they're focused on solely. So things like progressive overload, things like what body weight you want to be at, etc. They can actually be problematic for you during your journey if you focus solely on improving that metric regardless of anything else. And so this is an idea that I got from watching a Geoffrey Schofield video, who is another fitness YouTuber. Link to his channel down below. I think he does an excellent job. It sort of came up a little bit in one of his videos, and I thought it was such a great idea. I wanted to make a whole video myself on it. So the idea, if we go into Goodhart's law, is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. And you might initially hear that and go, what? No, it's the target. Of course, measuring that, it's a good metric. Duh, what are you thinking about, stupid? And I get that. I really do. But you have to understand that life is pretty nuanced. And so initially, that might be true. But generally speaking, along your journey, it can become a lot harder. So a great example of that would be a body weight goal. And I'll use myself as an example, right? So I was an extremely skinny person. Back in high school, as a senior, I was 6'5" and 155 pounds. Now I am 6'6", grew a little bit, and I'm 195 pounds. That is a huge 40-pound difference, but gaining that weight initially was pretty easy, but later became a lot harder. So I was able to get up to about 175 pretty easily, but going higher than that started coming into really having to do a lot more with looking at the details of my diet, really trying to plug things in, really trying to make sure that I'm not just eating a bunch of junk and becoming fatter along the way. I want to basically become more muscular as well, and basically reduce the amount of body fat that I was getting on that journey. And so again, that first part, pretty easy. Didn't really have to worry or think about things much at all. I was doing training, eating whatever I wanted, and that happened. But then again, pushing up higher, I just had to fight appetite. I had to fight, now I'm eating more calories, but a lot of these are now much more highly processed, and what do I do about this additional possibility of gaining body fat? Wasn't feeling good. So it took a lot more of not just focusing on the body weight goal anymore, but looking far more into the metrics of, all right, what's the body fat percentage? How do I feel? All of these other metrics going into it. And so that is basically what happens over time. So you need to be careful about that. And I see that a lot also with people looking at progressively overloading. So again, first beginner gains is very easy to basically be adding reps or weight to the bar most sessions without a whole lot of difficulty. But what I see as people progress from sort of the novice to the more intermediate level of strength training is that things get compromised focusing solely on progressive overload, and a lot of times that leads to changes in form. And two problems that I ultimately see for a lot of people is they're either one, they're changing their form so much so that they're no longer even targeting the muscles that they really want to. It's become so exaggerated. The auxiliary muscles that they're trying to recruit to help lift that additional weight and just add every time aren't triggering the muscle growth in the areas that they want. And ultimately, again, they plateau, but this time with terrible form. And then they have to essentially a lot of times check their ego, go back down in weight to where they were starting to plateau in the beginning, and really focus on form, really focus on trying to master that form at that point, maybe slowing down the bar speed, really trying to get that down and nailing it, and then slowly progressing back up to sort of where they had kind of cheated their way up there. The other thing though that I see is if that's not the case, then a lot of times they are so using the auxiliary muscles that they end up getting themselves injured. And so this can also happen. Pretty classic example is a rounding of the back with something like deadlift. They're just trying to use that lower back to get that last bit up, and it can lead to things like snap city, and that's a no-go zone. You do not want to be there. And so yes, you should be trying to get stronger over time, but you also need to be cognizant of the other factors going into it. Is your form staying where it should be? Is the tension correctly in the muscles? Or do you need to do some other things? You need to change it up in some way, or do you need to take the time to focus on improving certain lagging muscle groups, or really focusing on form or other things? And so again, I get the idea, progressive overload, great. That's ultimately what we want to do over the course of a year. But sometimes we need to take a look at our training blocks, take a look at what's happening, and say, okay, we need to put this a little bit on the back burner and change things up in our training to optimize to get that next level growth. And, this is just something that happens everywhere. Goodhart's law is actually, he was an economist back in the 1970s in Great Britain. He was basically criticizing the British government's monetary policy, and this sort of applies everywhere. So it's not just the gym, it can apply to your life in general. Things like companies trying to focus on profit versus everything else. One of my uncles worked at Bethlehem Steel, and one of the problems they did is he was in the research department. They were doing research to make the process of manufacturing the steel better, but the cost of actually upgrading their own factories, short term, they didn't like that. So instead, to make immediate profit, they basically sold the technology to other companies, and eventually basically lost a big foothold in their steel business. And so long-term losses ended up happening. And so this is something that you have to consider for yourself. A lot of these metrics you have in the beginning of your journey can be good starting points, but if you don't balance them as you go forward, you can end up in a world of hurt. So yeah, wanted to bring this idea to you guys. Hopefully it was helpful. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Has this ever happened to you? Have you had to go back and basically retrain, get form better, all of that? Love to hear from you. Talk to you guys. So again, talk to you guys later. Justin out.